Hello everyone and welcome back. Today's video is truly heartbreaking. Oh, it's so sad. So definitely I advise, if you can't handle devastating cases, this video is not for you. The Stayner family is it bad luck? I don't even know. But this video will most likely be in parts. I'm not too sure how many parts, but it will say at the bottom part 1, part 2. So I would definitely start with this video because I'm going to give as much background as possible from Steven Stayner and Carrie Stayner and just the whole situation. So please stay tuned, subscribe if you like true crime videos, conspiracy theories, anything really. I'm trying to think of other things that I can do because I do want to branch into other things, but I'm not too sure. So leave comments down below. I wasn't sure if I should do hauls, if I should do vlogs. I mean, we are in isolation, so I don't really know what I could film, but still. Also, as I say every video, I feel like I'm quite far away from the camera as well, sorry about that, but as I say every video, make sure you follow my social media for more because I'm hosting a Q&A, I'm still taking in questions, and I have gotten some quite interesting questions and I'm quite excited to answer them when I hit 200 subscribers. So definitely comment them down below or follow my social media, which will be here. I will stop rambling and get into the video. Enjoy. A little background on the Stayner family. Steven Stayner was the third out of 5 children. The Stayner family was made up of 2 brothers, Carrie Stayner being the oldest. They had 3 sisters and then the parents Kay and Dilbert. They lived in a secluded farming town of Merced, California, in the shadows of Yosemite National Park. The mom, Kay, was quite a distant mother and she was known to be quite reserved. On December 4th, 1972, 7-year-old Steven was approached on his way home from school by a man named Irvin Edward Murphy. He had become acquainted with the convicted child rapist Kenneth Parnell, as they both worked in a resort in Yosemite National Park. Murphy was described by those who knew him as a trusting, naive, and simple-minded man who had been enlisted by Parnell to help him abduct a young boy. Acting on the instructions from Parnell, Murphy passed out gospel tracts to boys walking home from school that day, and after spotting Steven, Murphy claimed to be a church representative seeking donations. Steven later claimed that Murphy asked him if his mother would be willing to donate any items to the church. When the boy replied that she would, Murphy then asked Steven where he lived and if he would be willing to take Murphy to his home. After Steven agreed, a white Buick driven by Parnell pulled up, and Steven climbed into the car with Murphy. Parnell goes to a payphone. He comes back and tells Steven that he had just spoken to his parents and they no longer want him. And Parnell then told him that he was going to be his son. Parnell then drove a confused Steven to his cabin in nearby Cathy's Valley instead. Unbeknownst to Steven, Parnell's cabin was located only several hundred feet away from his maternal grandfather's residence. Parnell kept Steven in his room for about a week after. He kept giving him cough syrup to sedate him. Parnell molested Steven the first night at the cabin. He began raping Steven 13 days later. After telling Parnell that he wanted to go home many times during that first week, Parnell told Steven that he had been granted legal custody of the boy because his parents could not afford so many children and that they did not want him anymore. A few weeks after Steven was kidnapped, Parnell needed to pull up the stakes. He started drifting around California. They first moved to Santa Rosa. They would stay in motels, in small trailers, or broken down houses. Parnell began calling Steven Dennis Gregory Parnell, keeping Steven's real middle name and his birthday when enrolling him in various schools over the next several years. During this time, the school failed to get records, and those were the kind of days where they didn't really check that thoroughly. Parnell passed himself off as Steven's father. The two moved frequently around California, living in locations including Santa Rosa and Comanche. It's been 4 years since Steven was told that Parnell was now his father. Parnell and Steven ended up in a little town called Compsey, and they lived in a trailer. Parnell often told Steven to stay in the grounds of the trailer park. Parnell allowed Steven to begin drinking at a very young age, and to come and go virtually as he pleased. Parnell had also bounced from one job to another, some of his work requiring travel and leaving Steven unguarded, causing an adult Steven to remark he could have easily used these absences as opportunities to flee, but was unaware how to summon help. One of the few positive aspects of Steven's life with Parnell was the dog he had received as a gift from him, a Manchester Terrier that he named Queenie. This dog had been given to Parnell by his mother, who was not aware of Steven's existence during the period when he was living with Parnell. For a period of 18 months, a woman named Barbara Matthias lived with Parnell and Steven. According to Steven, Matthias, along with Parnell, raped him on 9 separate occasions at the age of 9. In 1975, on Parnell's instruction, Barbara Matthias tried to lure another young boy who was in the Santa Rosa Boys Club with Steven into Parnell's car. The attempt was unsuccessful. Matthias later claimed to have been completely unaware that Dennis, or Steven, had in fact been kidnapped. Kay and Delbert did not cope well. It crushed his father and he became a broken man. Kay, the mom, became even more distant. She was sort of raising her children almost robotically. Kay and Delbert became colder to their other children. While Steven was a freshman at Mendocino High School, some 300 miles to the south of his brother Carey, who was an upperclassman at Merced High School. Carey was known as the kid who had his brother kidnapped. Carey was well known for his humor, his drawings, and was a very good cartoonist. He was voted the most creative. Carey would always wear a hat. This was because he was compulsively pulling out his hair, and it was very severe. Emotionally, Carey had a tough time. During his childhood, Carey never had a girlfriend and never really got with girls. He started acting wildly inappropriate towards females. He exposed himself to one of his sister's friends. It seemed as though he had a compulsion with trying to get close to women or be sexual with them, but he was unable to develop any sort of interpersonal relationship with any woman. There's quite a surreal contrast between the two brothers. You've had one brother who's been subjected to unspeakable horrors for years, but by all appearances, he's a happy-go-lucky, athletic kid with a girlfriend. But then you have this other brother who's been left at home, and he wasn't that at all. He was known to be quite a loner, and he was a bit of a creep towards women. In 1979, Steven's now 14, and he's been with Parnell for 7 years. Parnell moves him to a very new remote location, so in his mind can stay one step in front of law enforcement. Parnell takes Steven to this small little town called Manchester, along the coast of Northern California. However, Parnell is now looking for another prepubescent boy. Steven knew what was going to happen, and he knew that it was wrong. He wasn't going to let this happen to another boy. Parnell goes back with the same motive that he used to get Steven. He paid a local kid to ride with them to a little town of Ukiah, California. He puts this high school kid out on the streets to go find him a boy. He finds 5-year-old Timothy White walking home from school. Steven watched Timmy suffer through his separation from his family for 2 weeks. Steven finally decided that he had to do something about it. He said that he wasn't going to let this child go through what he had already been through, and if he didn't take care of it now, or it would just get worse. Eventually, Steven got the courage to take Timmy and get out of the house when Parnell went to work. The two hitchhiked to the town of Ukiah. However, Timmy can't remember where he lives, so Steven figures the best thing to do is take him to the police station. Steven Stayner was known as Dennis for 7 long years. When he arrives at the police station, he says something that would be embedded in the public conscious forever. "I know my first name is Steven." This sentence became the title of a book, then a television movie. This showed how strongly Parnell manipulated Steven, how he didn't even know anything but his first name. By daybreak on March 2nd, 1980, Parnell had been arrested on suspicion of abducting both boys. When the police checked into his background, they found a previous sodomy conviction from 1951. Both children were reunited with their families that day. Steven is now home with his real family. Everyone was smiling and there was a lot of jubilation. Because it was truly a miracle Steven was home after all these years. People thought he was dead. However, eerily in the background, there's Kerry in his baseball cap, not smiling at all. Kerry was the older brother and had a very strange relationship with his younger brother. Steven was getting all of the attention, and Kerry just saw him as a completely different person. Steven didn't even recognize Kerry.
Good morning, Steven and Mr. and Mrs. Stayner. And Steven, how does it feel to be home?
Feels great.
Did you remember your parents well?
They didn't change that much. I recognized them when I got out of the car.
What about your brothers and sisters?
They changed a lot. I never recognized either one of them.
They shared a room and they didn't get along. Steven didn't understand the rules that he was now expected to live by. People told Kay, the mom, that Steven should seek professional help like counseling. The mom said no, it wasn't needed as he was dealing with everything fantastically. To the adults, he was seen as a hero. However, in school, Steven was constantly being made fun of. Steven has just been through 7 years of hell, and sadly, it was publicly known that there was sexual abuse and that Steven had been molested. This made his sexuality constantly under attack, as there was such a strong stigma around sexual abuse. While Steven was dealing with his built-up trauma and bullying, his brother Carrie was also battling his inner demons. While Steven was dealing with everything on top, he still had a trial to go through. Ultimately, Kenneth Parnell did face charges of kidnapping and false imprisonment, but he was never tried for the sexual assault in the case. In the end, there was apparently not enough sufficient evidence to prove those charges, and another few reasons why the charges of sexual assault were never tried was due to the belief that the courts were actually trying to protect Steven because rape and molestation victims were seen as quote-unquote damaged goods. They also said they have felt they were respecting the Stayner's parents' reluctance to discuss Parnell's crimes because of the strong stigma around male sexual abuse during this time. Although he was sentenced to 7 years, he only served 5. That was less time than what Steven was actually abducted for. Murphy, who helped abduct Steven, and Poorman, who helped abduct White, were convicted of lesser charges. Both claimed they knew nothing of the sexual assaults on Steven. Stayner remembered the kindness of who he called Uncle Murphy had shown him in his first week of captivity, while they were both under the influence of Parnell's manipulation. Steven believed that Murphy was as much as Parnell's victim as he and Timmy were. Barbara Mathias was never even arrested. Stayner's kidnapping and its aftermath prompted California lawmakers to change state laws to allow consecutive prison terms in similar abduction cases. Steven did make some money for consulting on the TV film that he actually had a part in. He blew almost all of that money on cars, drugs, and booze. He worked some jobs, and then he got married and had 2 kids. He was on a very good path, and he was very proud of who he had become. Steven was not ashamed of his past anymore, and was very well grounded. However, sadly, only at the age of 24, he was riding a motorcycle without a helmet. He was riding home from work and a car pulled out and crashed into him. He passed away due to head trauma. There was almost 500 people at his funeral, and Timmy White attended. He was only 14 at the time. White later became a Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department deputy in 2005. Like Steven, he gave lectures to children about his experience and the dangers of kidnapping. In 2004, Parnell was charged with attempting to purchase a child and attempted child molestation. White was summoned to testify, along with White's abductor, Sheen Poorman. Parnell was sentenced to 25 years to life. He died in jail in 2008 at the age of 76. White went on to have a family. However, sadly, in April 2010, Timothy White passed away from a pulmonary embolism. It's truly heartbreaking what Steven and Timothy went through and how early their lives had to end. However, this tragedy does not stop for the Stayner family.